Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to tune in and then I'll get started. Just bear with me a second. So again, I'm going to do a few live streams tonight. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about. Hopefully I'll be able to touch on these things briefly, knock out some of these. I may have to save one for tomorrow, but we'll see. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into it. Let me share my screen. Just bear with me a second. Okay, so this is an article from CNN. We all know what happened in Minneapolis. The brother George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police. As you all know, this police officer had the brother George Floyd handcuffed. He had his hands behind his back. You had one officer at his on his legs, another officer on his chest, and then you had this one officer put his knee, press his knee into this brother's neck. The brother repeatedly said he could not breathe. And eventually this brother lost consciousness. And when the EMS people arrived, the brother was non-responsive. And they said that he wasn't breathing, he didn't have a pulse or something like that. So basically the brother was dead on arrival. And as you all know, after this brother was killed, there were protests all around the country. The protests started in Minneapolis, and some of these protests have turned violent. And also another thing that has to be noted is that many of these protests have a large number of white protesters in them. And many of these white people are engaged in acts of vandalism during these protests. And this particular protest that took place in Minneapolis, there was this white man with an umbrella engaging in vandalism. And I'm not going to play the video right here, but this person helped ignite a lot of the riots that we saw, and destruction that we saw in Minneapolis. And I'm sure that there are others. I did a prior video on this subject. And this is part 2. This is another example of white supremacists infiltrating the movement and committing acts of violence. And some of these agent provocateurs are not only white supremacists, you have some that are actually working for law enforcement. Their job is to discredit the movement, to undermine the movement so that leaders can be arrested and so that the movement can be crushed. The reputation of the movement can be destroyed. If a movement is painted as violent, as extreme, it's easy to discredit that movement. It's easy to discourage people from following that movement. And it seems like that's what's happening in a lot of these situations where you have what appears to be agents acting on behalf of the government, committing acts of violence. And then you have another aspect where you have these white supremacists literally infiltrating the movement to destroy the movement and also to spark racial violence, to encourage, white people to have hostility towards the movement. So this article says that Minneapolis police have identified a suspect who they believed helped initiate the riots and the destruction in the city following the killing of George Floyd. They said that the man uh, is associated with Aryan Cowboys, which the Anti-Defamation League lists as a white supremacist prison and street gang. And it says that the warrant doesn't label them as a white supremacist group, but describes them as a known prison gang out of Minneapolis and Kentucky. Um, hold on one second. Hold on one second. Which ad is playing? That's the thing about doing stuff live. All right, so yeah, so it goes on to say that CNN is a suspect. Hold on, let me see what that is. Just bear with me a second. Just bear with me a second. And that story, I'm going to mention that story in a second. Oh, there it is. That's what it was. Sorry. Okay, so let's get back to this story. Hopefully YouTube won't say it's some copyright issue. But anyway, so it says CNN is not naming the suspect, who they dub Umbrella Man, following the demonstrations. And it says the police said no charges had been filed as of Tuesday afternoon. And they said that it remains open and an active investigation. And it says that the video of Umbrella Man went viral after protesters in Minneapolis confronted and filmed him while he was in the act of smashing several windows on an AutoZone store. So he just kept going by the store and just knocking out the windows. And then it says that an arson investigator wrote in a search warrant affidavit that the man also spray painted the words "free shit for everyone zone" on the doors of AutoZone. And it says not long after he smashed the windows, looting began. And a bit later, AutoZone was set on fire. And it says that this was the first fire that set off a string of fires and looting throughout the precinct and the rest of the city. So you have this man, smashing these windows, basically encouraging Black people and others to engage in acts of violence, to destroy property and stuff like that. And this discredits the movement, because the first thing that they say is, that Black Lives Matter is responsible. These people are violent. These people are, they label them with all kinds of things. And then because of that, people can get arrested, people can get shot by the police. And the only thing that I could think of with these white supremacists, they want to spark a race war. That's what they want to do. So they're trying to throw fuel on the fire. They're trying to pretend like they're down with the movement when they're not, when their whole intent is to destroy Black people and to destroy the interests of Black people. And I'm glad that people, the protesters filmed this person. Yeah, but it's just like, that's what we have to do. Like, we have to control our demonstrations. Like, if we are demonstrating, we need to make sure that we know who's participating in these demonstrations. Don't just let anybody off the street join in with your group or become a part of your movement. It's like we are so eager for allies that too often we just accept anybody. I've seen examples of Black people actually standing up to some of these agent provocateurs and stuff, telling them not to do that kind of stuff. And we need more of that. You know, you had that situation in Portland, Oregon, that's just spiraling out of control. Um, and it's a lot, you know, it's probably some agent provocateurs involved in that. You know, because of the activity of some of those agent provocateurs over there in Portland, the whole message of Black lives and, you know, the end of police brutality, all of that's being drowned out by the antics of these extremists that don't have the best interests of Black people at heart. And many of these people are white. Um, and, you know, I view it with suspicion that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all these white people are embracing Black Lives Matter. All of a sudden, all these white people care about police brutality. To me, that's suspect. You know, there are a lot of genuine white allies, and no disrespect to them, but a lot of these people are not real allies. A lot of these people are agents. A lot of these people are white supremacists. And this is just a prime example of it. Here you got this guy pretending like he's down with the movement, knocking out windows and encouraging people to loot. And, you know, you had statements from the mayor talking about, you know, the mayor there talking about the possible influence of outsiders and white supremacists. Because a lot of these people, they travel from state to state participating in these marches and demonstrations. And the question is like, what is their intent? Who is paying for their travel? Who's paying for all this time that they're off from work, or, you know, who's accommodating them? Who's paying for their hotel stay and stuff like that? You had these people hopping from state to state to state, getting involved in these demonstrations. And sadly, some of them are white supremacists. And it says that they you know, it says that they received a tip about the identity of this umbrella man. And the tipster told the investigator that the man wanted to sow discord and racial unrest by breaking out the windows and writing what he did on the double red doors. And then, you know, the funny thing is that this man was present during another incident where a Muslim woman claimed that she was being racially harassed by this motorcycle group that I mentioned before, the Aryan Cowboys Brotherhood. And the police just didn't take that seriously. You know, in another article, the police brushed her off and made it seem like she was crazy for asking that action be taken against this gang. And here we are later finding out that this gang is affiliated with what happened in Minneapolis. So I had to share that story with you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to see if you all have anything to say. But yeah, you know, it's just something else, man. It's just like we got to take control over these demonstrations. You know, we shouldn't let any outsider just join our movement and do anything in our name. And that's what you're having right now. You know, you have a lot of these demonstrations where these white supremacists and agent provocateurs are involved in the demonstrations. Yeah, so I'm going to pull up another article that talks about like just the racial makeup of these demonstrations. And it's just, to me, I just find it suspect. I mean, maybe it's just me, but it doesn't make sense that you would have this going on. Let me find this article. There's an article that talks about the racial makeup of these demonstrations. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, why are so many non-Black people involved in Black Lives Matter? And where are the Black people? Like, why are more Black people involved? And I asked this on Facebook, and some of my friends had a few things to say about that, but I'm really interested in hearing from y'all. Like, why do you think that so many of these people that participate in these rallies are white? And again, no disrespect to those who are sincere, that are those who are on the front lines. I had nothing but respect for those people. I support coalitions, but to me, it just something about this rubs me the wrong way. Something about the majority of these demonstrations being made up by majority white people. Something is wrong with that picture. Something is wrong with a picture where you have this movement all of a sudden being embraced by these Fortune 500 companies and stuff like that. Um, so according to this article, and it says, according to Pew Research, it says the majority of Black Lives Matter protesters are white Democrats. It says Black Americans account for only 17% of those who say they attended a protest focused on race or racial equality in the last month, while 46% of those who said they had attended a Black Lives Matter protest are white. And then it goes into some stats about, beliefs and all that kind of stuff. I'll post a link to this in the comments. Well, I'll post it in the description box so that people can read it. So it talks about views of white liberals on these criminal justice issues. It says, of the 6% of American adults who said they attended a protest or rally in the last month, according to the recent Pew Research Center survey, most of the actual marchers were likely to be white, live in an urban area, and vote for or support the Democratic Party, particularly focused on issues related to race or racial equality. It said that recent Hispanic American Black Lives Matter marchers accounted for 22%, slightly more than their ethnic representation, similar to Black attendees. Yeah, so to me, that's just odd, man. It doesn't make sense that you would have these Black demonstrations and they be made up mainly by white people. And it's like, a number of questions come to mind. And one of those questions is like, why aren't more Black people participating in these demonstrations? And I mean, I understand, like with COVID-19, why many people would be reluctant to participate in the demonstration. But why is it that more white people are participating in these demonstrations than Black people? I mean, percentage wise, like why? Like, given the fact that these issues affect us the most, like we're participating in these demonstrations the least. How does that make any kind of sense? Covina Man pointed out that the most extreme and non-productive protests are in non-Black cities. Yeah, like Portland. Like in Portland, Black people make up a minority, but yet you got all these white people out here marching for against police brutality and, in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And as I said before, that whole message of the Black Lives Matter movement and the message against, dealing with police brutality is being drowned out. And the focus is on just clashing with these federal agents and all that kind of stuff, these federal officers. So it's become, in the words of one of the local Black leaders there, it's become like a spectacle. And that's a shame. But yeah, I had to share this with you all. Tell me what you all think about this topic. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Again, I'm going to be back up with a couple of other videos. So I hope that you all can hang with me. If not, check them out later. Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a good night.